How did a beaver killed in the road inspire this video? The Suicidal Beaver. Oh, the mighty beaver. This little creature behind me is, in fact, a beaver. Not the beaver, the main central character in this story, but a beaver all the same. Now, beavers have nothing to do with astronomy. I don't know of any constellations called the beaver, though there should be. Maybe we should create one. Astronomy really is about storytelling. It's about making whatever you're doing interesting, and sometimes interesting even to yourself. And you will remember certain observations because of things that occurred around the observations themselves also, or how the story was presented to you, what have you, something would have happened. And that's what this video is really all about. It's really about the stories that people that connect to the actual observations and what helps us to remember them and helps us to move on to new discovery. GERA Foundation presents this series called Navigating Research. This is an image of a beaver on his dam in the wild. This is a happy and mentally healthy beaver. This is a suicidal beaver. This story will have occurred many years ago. It was likely in the mid-90s when I was first working in South Africa, and I would have to come back to Canada every year to renew my visa or whatever the heck. Every couple years I get a 2-year visa or whatever the heck it was, and I'd have to renew it. And so I'd come back and I'd stay with my parents. This is my dad above me. And this is not my mother. This is a beaver. Let's be clear. You know, we're not interspecies here. Although I do have a similar head, I think, personally. But you never know. You never know. One of my grandparents were second cousins. My great-grandparents were first cousins. Very small town. Who else would you marry? And that might explain something about me. A typical day would start. My brother Alec, who lived up the road and worked construction, he would get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and he would go to the coffee shop. A coffee shop begun by my great aunt. As I said, small community, very small, very rural, very small, lots of water, muskrats. There was no coyotes back then, mind you, but there's lots of beaver. Okay, and lots of beaver dams, etc. And he would go get himself coffee and he'd sit and chat to his buddies, because all the people that did construction, they would all meet there around 5:30 in the morning. They would all have coffees and sit and talk, and then they would get on the road and go off to work. Well, Alec would first come to the house and have a coffee with my mom and dad before we'd go to work. And he came in one morning, sat down, got his coffee, and he sits down and he starts talking. He says, "Oh yeah, there's a dead beaver across the road on the sidewalk." Okay, and that was that sort of story. And then he had his coffee, got up, went off to work. And I was sitting there thinking about this, and I said, "Dad, do you have a little piece of paper and some string?" And he goes, "Yeah, why?" I go, "I want to write a suicide note for the beaver." And he's like, "What?" And he looks, and then he gives me this grin he's giving me right now for this camera shot. And he runs off and he gets what we need, right? He gets the appropriate materials. And my mom is looking at the two of us thinking, and she literally says, "Horses' asses." And we're writing this suicide note, and I sign it, "The Beaver." And basically it was complaining about how the city workers were treating the village of Port Franks, because it was a conglomeration of various villages to make a city, for lack of a better word. Total population was maybe, a couple thousand. And so I take this suicide note and I go over across the road where Alex said the beaver was, and I find the beaver. I tie the note to the animal's paw and I leave it. And of course, I know that what'll happen throughout the day or the week, eventually someone will come along from town council and the animal control, whoever it is, and they'll pick up this deceased animal from the road. And then, of course, they will see the suicide note. And so it's kind of a joke. Dad and I are basically playing on the people that are working. And we thought nothing of it. That was it. So about a week goes by. And, of course, the same process every morning occurs. Alec comes in, and we just have mindless conversations. And I think it was about the Friday. And this was around about a Monday or Tuesday. And so a few days later, Alec comes in. He says, geez, you won't believe it. Everybody is talking about the suicidal beaver. And this was the talk of the town. And this was the talk of this little community, right? The stupid suicidal beaver, the whatever. And of course, it's just a classic, just to me, I thought it was just a great joke. And Dad and I just snicker and we carry on. And this is the story. It's a suicidal beaver. And you remember that moment. You remember, thinking about it, why you did. I don't remember why I did it. Just something came into my head. I have no idea. I've got a strange sense of humor. This is the suicidal beaver story. And this, you might wonder, what the hell has this got to do with astronomy? It's simple. Stories remind you of things. They remind you of memories. In this case, good memories of my mom and dad and my brother Alec coming around and good times. And the same is true in astronomy. So let us go to that.
A few moments later.
As a form of public service announcement, please try to avoid hitting these creatures. When you're driving down country roads or any place in the dark, be careful, be aware. Don't be one of those sick bastards that goes out there and intentionally tries to hit the animal that's on the side of the road. Don't do that. I know at times you can't avoid because it's busy traffic, and if you slam on your brake or swerve, you could cause a worse accident that could endanger yourself. I recognize. And just as a matter of course, just so you know, I've actually eaten beaver. Doesn't taste very good, to be frank with you. So you don't have to try it. Just take my word for it.
A few moments later.
Bobby, you are the greatest hockey player ever. Now I've taken away the picture of the great Bobby, and all you have is me left holding my mug, and you can see I'm unabashedly promoting merch from the GERA Foundation website. Oh, and by the way, so is the t-shirt. Signal to noise from the website. I could be more obvious. A toque that I wear because I got no hair and my ears get cold when it gets to -40 here. And I enjoy wearing that toque. But the fact that it's my merch means nothing. That's not the point of this short video. What I'm trying to say is, when you have an image, the image is very powerful, but you want people to associate and remember the image. The advertisers, they recognize the power of the image, and they do placement advertising. A mug sitting on the table in the movie, whatever, and you notice that, you go, oh, geez, I'll go get a Coke, whatever the heck it is, right? And so advertisers will buy for that time, especially if it's a very famous show. And our videos are our videos. Our pictures are different, though. They're not as powerful, especially when you're looking at wiggly line spectroscopy. It's an example of a squiggly line spectroscopy. It's very difficult for one of those images to be so powerful that people go, huh, that's really cool. So what we do is we tell interesting stories, not just about the science, but about how the science came about or something associated to it, something funny that happened or something terrible that happened. And that's what we do. And that's what you have to do to sell your science, really. So that image you have is interesting to you and a few readers. To make it more interesting is add a story to it. A dramatic distraction from what we're talking about. Did you know the Romans had their own naval SEALs unit? At the Battle of Medway in 43 AD, they deployed the Batavians. These were a Germanic tribe, well-known, excellent swimmers. They were able to swim long distance underwater in full armor, appear on the opposite shore, and cause absolute chaos in the British ranks, leading to a Roman victory.
A few moments later.
This is a good example in astronomy terms of how powerful an image can be, especially when you attach a story to it. In this particular instance, this is the work done by Carl Menton, published in 1991. You can see an image of him in the upper left-hand corner. Regrettably, he died about a year and a half ago, or a year and a month ago, or 2 months. He had proposed, and then he observed using Greenbank's 43 meter, you can see it here, he had proposed that this transition, 6.7 gigahertz, would have very strong masers, and then he went out and proved it on Green Bank, and here's his strongest source. And he playfully referred to it as, at the conference in 1992, the first masers conference, note the shameless plug for the GERA Foundation. He referred to it as the mother of all methanol masers. Now, most people listening to this video will not get the reference. They will not know what it's from. But in 1991, Saddam Hussein had already invaded Kuwait, and the Allied forces were threatening to push him out. And so he said to the world, it will be the mother of all battles. Not the mother of all wars, which everybody thinks, but rather the mother of all battles. And this is what Carl Menton was playing on. And so when I see this image, first off, I see the great science that Carl Menton had done, and I recognize it as being one of the greatest discoveries in masers since the discovery of masers. But also, it's a story I get to tell. And every time I show this image, I will always mention mother of all methanol masers. And people will all go away and they will remember that quote. And they will remember Carl Menton as a result. That is the power of tying a story to your image. And that's what makes us more successful astronomers, at least as it relates to presentation to the general public. My poor beaver is no longer with us, but he will always remind me of my dad smiling and smirking when he ran off to get that paper and that string. And out there somewhere, somebody who picked up the animal will say to someone, you know, I found a beaver on a road once. It had a suicide note. And I will never meet that person, but it's still funny. But the same is true in astronomy. When you look at that image I showed by Carl Menton, and he called it the mother of all methanol masers, what will happen is you will associate that in your head, and you'll remember. You may not remember the science, but you will remember that it was the brightest methanol maser. And that's what you'll remember. And that's our job. It's very important that we find stories to tell around the images we really want to put out front that people will go away with, especially the general public. Because a lot of the science will be lost on them. They'll be interested in astronomy, but the science itself will be lost on them. They're not at that proficiency. There will be a few that are excellent physicists or mathematicians, but the reality is most of them will not be. They'll be high school level physics and maths and whatnot. And you've got to find a way to tie a story to your image to make it memorable. They will remember the story and in turn remember the image. So I always refer to this as edutainment. We educate while we entertain. And anybody that's in the education business knows that the way for people to remember things is to tell them, then remind them, and then tell them again, and so on. Well, in our case, we're telling an interesting and entertaining story. With that, we will put information that we want them to remember and go away with. That's how this game operates. And that's it. So if you take anything away from this video, besides my friend the beaver here, who's suicidal, hopefully he got over it. Hopefully he got the proper psychological treatment. Maybe a psychologist or someone chatted to him while he was on his dam, still alive. I don't know. Let's hope so. And so I say to all of you, please try to be entertaining while you educate. Cheers, Carl. Cheers, Mom, Dad. Beaver, hope you're out there somewhere. The GERA Foundation will produce more videos like this. Please like, share, or subscribe if you enjoyed this video.